Hello and welcome, everybody. Good to see you. Glad that you are back, family, friends, cousins, new folks, folks we've already seen. Welcome to the Faith, Food, and Freedom Summer Series. We are so excited you're here. We would ask that you shout out your city, any organizations that you want to represent, and your churches that you are connected to and tied to. Go ahead and drop those in the chat box. And always remember, if you have questions or comments or things that you are enjoying or want to learn more about in the presentation, drop that in the comment box as well. So we are going to focus and look at our three pillars today. So let's pull those up on the screen and get going. Number one, promote gardening at African American churches. This is huge for us. We want to create and work on building our own food systems and support structures. Number two, patronize Black farmers. We're increasing visibility, economic compensation, and just building Black farmer wealth and putting money back into their pockets at rates and wages that actually match their needs and necessities and don't just sell them short or undercut their profit margins. And number three, we are trying to promote emergency food preparedness. We all need to have food preparation, whether it's canned foods, shelf stable foods, whatever it's going to be. We need to make sure that we have what we need in case grocery stores and other things shut down, even if it's only for a couple of days. We want to make sure we're able to feed ourselves. So that's a huge thing that we're focusing on. And so today we have an awesome and amazing guest with us, and we're so excited to have you all join us. So today we have Miss Germaine Jenkins, the co-founder of Chief Farm Officer, at Fresh Future Farm Incorporated in North Charleston, South Carolina. She earned her commercial urban agriculture certification from Growing Power in 2014. She won seed capital to start an urban farm and grocery store in the heart of a residential neighborhood. The farm has sold or distributed over 17 tons of primary and specialty groceries, hosted over 200 students for STEAM, which is STEM and art, combined farm camps, and trained over 100 adults in natural gardening practices. Most importantly, FFF has kept the bulk of its revenue in the community as compensation for residents. The pandemic forced the closure of the sliding scale grocery store. Still, the FFF team continues to offer biweekly grocery distributions to neighbors. It is a fiscal sponsor of the Low Country Mutual Aid Fund, which supports the rent utility needs of marginalized BIPOC and LGBTQ people. And without further ado, I want to present to some and introduce to others Germaine Jenkins. Thank you so much for being with us today, Germaine. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Alex.
You know, us here at BCFSN are just so interested and inspired by your work, especially with FFF having its own sliding scale grocery store. And that's one of the things I definitely want to talk about later. And I know that, the corona or Rona or the
Yes.
pandemic, however we want to call it, has impacted you all. But let's do a little background.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about that. And so can you talk about your background into food systems and agriculture and social justice, and how you got to where you are now with FFF?
Okay. So a long story, and I'll try to wrap it up. I moved to Charleston to finish my degree in culinary arts, and had two young children at the time and didn't know anybody here. So it was we immediately had a need for food. So I was just impacted personally and trying to figure out a way that we could afford to eat. Yeah. So I went to NeighborWorks America classes to learn about placemaking first, and that there was a rich history in the North Charleston neighborhood where we settled. And I learned about that before we planted anything on the site. So not only do we have fresh groceries there, but we also have a mural that represents the rich history of that neighborhood. And now you can come to the farm and find a mural that represents the neighborhood's past, from when the indigenous Kasapa tribe was there, to the first ever Black Farmers Conference that we hosted in 2019.
Wow. Okay. And so, and you got your certification from Growing Power.
Right.
And, for Growing Power was a huge, and it's still an operating organization. They've done some good work, and some other stuff has come up as we both, I'm sure, are aware of. But can
Right.
you talk a little bit to what the experience was like getting your certification from Growing Power?
Well, before I went to Growing Power, I got my permaculture design certificate.
Okay.
And if anybody doesn't know what permaculture is, it's essentially dominant culture taking ancestral conservation and farming and packaging it for about $1,000 as a lesson. So,
Well,
and what Growing Power did that was so great is they were teaching these same conservation without labeling it in a way that wasn't accessible, no matter what background you came from.
okay. And so here you are now with FFF, and
Mm-hmm.
with not only with the pandemic, but with everything we see going on in terms of the people's uprising against police brutality, against marginalization, oppression, racism that's systemic and environmental. What is, how has FFF become this sort of central place of community, and how does food justice tie into the uprising that we are witnessing and participating in currently?
Well, and Reverend Brown said it in the video, like Fannie Lou Hamersell said, when you have your own food, nobody can tell you what to do or push you around. And I felt pushed around as an underpaid person with a family that had to travel outside the neighborhood to feed my folks. And the money that we spent in that other neighborhood stayed there. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
we didn't have a grocery store that met the needs of my eldest child who had food allergies. So, yeah, so we first started in our yard growing food, and even having gone to like the organic food stores, our produce tasted way better than theirs. Our eggs tasted way better than theirs, and it was all available in my backyard. So we wanted to make that available to the community as well.
And so you said you started growing in your backyard,
Mm-hmm.
and you had your own eggs. And
Yes.
I'm gonna come back to the eggs because I've been trying to push my partner to let me get some chickens for a minute. And that's
Yeah.
a whole nother conversation. But what did you start growing? What was the first thing you started growing?
I think the first thing we started growing, or the thing I remember, is my 8-year-old son harvesting cabbage in our backyard. Yeah. So brassicas were our start.
And what did that do for you and for your family, having that experience of growing your own food, harvesting your own food, and then eating your own food, knowing that it tastes better?
I think gardening is just like a gateway into just self-sufficiency overall, because it's wild that we are so disconnected from our ancestors who did this their entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because we were able to grow our food, like, what else can we do? And I took the confidence that was built up in us from doing our home garden, homestead, to doing Fresh Future Farm.
And so, when did Fresh Future Farm start, and who is working with you now?
It started in 2014. We got approved from the city to take a vacant lot that they owned and turn it into a farm and grocery store. Uh, we bought, we didn't buy anything. Actually, the building that we use as our grocery store now was a modular building that a nearby car dealership had as a rental car company on site. So we just had to pay to move it and get it up to code. And then we started a store. But it took a year from us planting trees and brassicas again at Fresh Future Farm before we opened a farmer's market on that site. That was 2015.
Okay.
And then May of 2016 is when we opened the grocery store.
And so the grocery store has a sliding scale concept. And would you mind just elaborating a little bit on what a sliding scale grocery store actually looks like in practice?
Okay. It took us a minute to figure out the sliding scale. And reading the book Farming While Black really helped us figure it out. But we had folks that lived in the neighborhood who are making minimum wages, for whom the affordable price we charged weren't comparable to Walmart, as an example, who has economies of scale that we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to talk to somebody about economies of scale. When they brought it to our attention that they couldn't afford our groceries, we changed the prices that day.
Mm. So can you give me an example of what the prices were and what they changed to, if you can remember?
I can give you a comparison. I don't know
Okay.
if y'all have like a Publix where you are.
I know what Publix is, yeah.
Yeah, well, just imagine we have Publix prices on the shelf, but if you are struggling with educational expenses, you have dependents, medical expenses, immigration expenses, or a felony that's keeping you from getting a well-paid job, then you qualify for the discount. So that's 35% off that Publix price would get you to a Walmart price.
Okay. And
Yeah,
so with the with the grocery store and the pandemic that came up, and you're still doing the biweekly distribution, what
right.
does that look like now because of the pandemic and trying to get food out to folks? Like what does that distribution process look like for you all?
Well, it was the first thing we did was empty our shelves right before we knew there was going to be a physical distancing with folks
Hmm.
because our store is only 600 square feet.
Okay.
So we gave away about $5,000 worth of inventory.
Mm.
And then we came back a couple weeks later where in the same way that we would procure supplemental stuff to complement our produce that we we're growing on
Hmm.
site, we put those together in bags and distributed to 40 households and then put together bags, about 10 of them, for the unhoused folks. We call those bachelor's bags.
Okay. I like that. I like that. And so with the with these distributions that are going on, are you
Mhm.
finding now during the pandemic that what you grow and what you distribute is even more essential?
Yes.
Or okay. And why is that, if you don't mind?
Well, first, I didn't say that we procured grants so that we could give 100% discount
Okay.
during the pandemic. But there's food banks and other places that are distributing food, but very few are distributing fresh produce.
Mm,
And then we also include value added items in that bag. So, for example, last week we did like a chicken vegetable soup that went with the produce, trash bags. We've done PPEs, and we also distributed sausage from a local pig farmer.
So one of the questions that we actually have coming in right now is, where's the food sourced from the grocery store when you all up and running? And you just started talking about it, but if you wouldn't mind just touching on where some of the other value added stuff comes from, and also like from your actual farm, what are you growing still to put into these distribution bags?
The pandemic screwed up our summer season. So,
Mm-hmm.
we had some kale at the very beginning, um, herbs that went into some of the value added items that were prepared on site. But right now, we just did pears from our trees that went into bags. And outside of the farm, there's a purveyor nearby that services restaurants. We can buy bananas, apples, cucumbers, and tomatoes from them to supplement. But we get some stuff from Sam's and then other wholesalers and some
Okay.
grocery stores if there's a sale.
Okay. Okay. And so with FFF running as it is right now, what are your vision, or I guess, what's your vision for FFF as we continue to move through the space of the pandemic? What would you like to see happen, and what would you like to do?
Okay, I wrote this down because that was a deep question. Okay, my vision here is that every community that has had to endure food apartheid has its own food cooperative controlled by the people that live in those communities. And
Okay,
that the
let me stop you real
percentage,
quick. Let me stop you real quick because you just dropped two very important terms, and I want to know if you could just develop on them. I don't want to stop your answer because you got a good flow, but
Mhm.
could you describe food apartheid, and then could you also could you define that word for us, and then uh, break down what I think you said food system or a food system structure, like what those two things are for us, real quick.
Well, for me, the easy explanation of food apartheid is access without control.
Mm,
So, there's pantries that serve, other organizations that get together to distribute food, but you as the individual that's receiving the food have no say as to what you're receiving.
mm.
And I think I mentioned food cooperatives as,
Yes, you said food cooperatives. That's what it was.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know who has access to these, but these are like grocery stores, but they are worker owned, so that like any profits that the store makes go back to the people who work there. And preferably those people come from the community that's being served.
Mm. Thank you. I think those are really important because everyone's heard of food apartheid or food cooperatives, let alone the understanding that they could be part of or start their own food cooperative. I want to make sure we highlight those things,
Mhm.
especially in this time when food systems, or just even the pandemic itself. You all had to shut your grocery store down, and
Yeah,
so how do we make sure those other layers are in place? So again, if you wouldn't mind going back to what the vision for
yeah.
FFF is in the space of this pandemic.
Beyond communities with food cooperatives, we want to, as far as the Black farmer communities it concerned in South Carolina, we want to make sure that the percentage of Black farmers matches the percentage of Black South Carolinians in the state. So if there's 12% Black people in South Carolina, we want there to be 12% Black farmers.
And what's the significance of population matching farmer population?
Well, I talked to our state representative here, and right now in the state, there's 25,000 farmers, and only 2,700 are Black.
Mm,
So that has an impact on the food that our most underserved neighborhoods have access to. So we want to
and
do
you
something about that.
and you mentioned earlier, not just with the food, with embedded in the food apartheid piece about food access, but receiving food with no control. and how
Right.
you all are providing fresh produce versus what's given maybe from a food pantry. What's the
Mhm.
significance for you as someone who um, has, has a background in culinary? What's the difference in the significance of, you know, fresh food versus food you receive maybe just from the pantry that isn't necessarily coming straight from the farm?
Well, I've stood in pantry lines before, so I've had the experience of spending an hour in a line in the cold weather with my kids, only to get home and have a bag full of stuff I didn't want to feed them. So for me, uh, what we're able to bring because we have a sliding scale grocery store is accountability. So because people are paying something for the food that we sell, they can come back and tell us, oh, that wasn't sweet or that wasn't fresh. And we are held to a high standard. And we get feedback from our customers. And if there's something that we don't have in the store that they want, we make sure to get it. So the store
Mm,
actually serves the customers. And we're not produce snobs. So if you want neck bones in your collard greens, we'll make sure to get those neck bones.
you know what? Sounds like I need to start moving or something. I need to come down to be with you. Y'all talk about specialty grocery stores. Ooh. So someone has said that they don't quite understand access without control. Would you mind elaborating a little bit more about that, just about that concept, especially as you mentioned food apartheid?
Okay, so folks who have enough money after they pay their bills at the month can go to the grocery store anytime they want to and get what they want to eat and feed their family. If you don't have those things and you rely on a pantry, you have no voice as to what's in the bag or the box. So it
Mm.
might be available like on a weekly or monthly basis, but you have no control of what's being distributed.
And it's almost as if every time you go to get something from the pantry or you go to get a, a, a box of food, it's a surprise. And you have to
Yes,
just kind of work with what you're given. Even if you, like you said, you take the food home to your kids and you don't want to eat that, but that's what
no,
you got.
right. And I used to work for a food bank as a nutrition coordinator. So because of that experience, I felt like Iron Chef, and I was helping other agencies figure out what to do with the stuff in those boxes. But um, the other issue with something not like a store, but a pantry that's feeding you, the folks that work at that pantry, that work at that food bank, are getting paid livable wages and they don't live in your neighborhood. So what's important for us is that the bulk of the money that flows from the organization stays in the neighborhood. So that's the other level of control.
Which I think is so essential because you mentioned with FFF the idea not only of going back into the community, but also being responsive to the community.
Yes.
And I think I'm really stuck on that idea of like you as farmers and as the uh, grocery establishment are responding to the needs of your customers and of your
Right.
clients.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that such an essential component of running the farm and running the grocery store when able?
You said something about emergency preparedness around food.
Hmm.
Because we know what our customers want, when we pack those bags in early or late March, each customer got what they would normally shop for if there wasn't a pandemic. So because they have insight and we have relationships with those customers, we're able to meet their needs not only during sort of normal times, but also when there's a natural disaster or pandemic. And additionally, I'll just think of a customer who came to us, and when they started, all they bought were the packaged goods. But because we never judged them on what they bought, they trusted us, and there was mutual respect. So when I would recommend different produce items, they trusted us, tried it, and like it, and now are more adventurous. And now at least 50% of what they buy from the store is produce. And we got to a point where we were selling tinctures from
Mm.
a producer in North Carolina, and they were ready to try those as well. So we established rapport. We listen to what our customers tell them. So if your doctor says you need more fiber, I can show you what you can buy to increase the fiber in your diet that's based on what you like to eat.
Mm. And what do you, I guess for you, what does that mean with your culinary background too? Like what kind of challenges and in terms of nutrition and getting folks more involved in this space of, shopping for what they want and for what they need? Like what kind of challenge did that present to you or an opportunity?
I was going to say it's an opportunity all the way. Um, because, despite what you might hear, like in a food bank or pantry setting, our customers know how to cook. We just give them tips on how to prepare what's culturally relevant, that's easier, and maybe incorporates more vegetables than they had before. And that advice is readily accepted because of the mutual respect. And uh, we ended up producing a cookbook last year that incorporates at least 50 different recipes that are either culturally relevant, because I don't know if y'all have heard of red rice, which is
Mm.
something that's very popular in Charleston. But I introduced through the cookbook a Cuban red rice recipe.
Mm. So, so now we're here talking, and you're talking about the cookbook. What is a way that somebody can get access to this cookbook? Is it free? Can they buy it in a way of supporting? Like, is there a link that we can search up?
Mhm. You can go to our website, www.freshfuturefarm.org, and go to our shop. And the first thing there is our cookbook, or you can access it on Amazon. And we got a grant, so we were able to distribute 300 copies for free to the
So
neighborhood.
it sounds like a lot of the work that y'all are doing with FFF is really focused on building those community relationships,
Mhm.
providing access and visibility, and then engaging with this life journey of folks on under food access and understanding for their own nutritional value.
Right.
Is am I in the right ballpark, or are we going
You
somewhere
are.
else?
You are. And then the next level for us is because we employ from the community and we know that entrepreneurship is a way out of poverty. We want to use the farm store as a way to create entrepreneurs who like spend 5 years with us, get the exposure and the training that they need to run their own companies, and then they work for us as consultants. And that's a way for us to get more people into entrepreneurship through the farm.
And what sort of transformations, with not just with the visions that you have, but with the work that's already done, what sort of transformations have you seen in your community and in yourself and with your clients just as a whole?
We've gotten lots of positive health reports from customers, folks who had high cholesterol that struggle with it. Now all of a sudden their doctor's calling them on the phone and ask them what they're doing. We although our community struggles with like health disparities, Fresh Future Farm, because nothing that we grow is more than 200 feet away from where we sell it, We have the most nutrient dense food that you can buy anywhere in town.
Hmm. And so, no, me knowing and understanding that, like, once you harvest something, after about 3 days, you start to lose that nutritional value that's really in the food.
Right.
And we're talking. We've also mentioned in the beginning, wanting churches to grow
Mhm.
their own food. What do you think the significance would be of like churches opening their own gardens and providing their own food to their communities in a similar sort of way?
There's multiple blessings in growing a garden in a church. Not only is there a nutritional benefit, but it's therapeutic, it's low impact exercise, and it's a way to connect with community.
And how would you
So,
say? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
well, and just to think in perspective, Save a Lot costs $6 million a year to operate. We have a 600 square foot store and a .8 acre grocery store that's like $500,000 a year with 8 employees and no debt. So our churches
Hmm.
have the resource to do this where they are.
Hmm. So, like, can you repeat those numbers one more time? Because I'm trying to fathom all of them in my mind.
Yeah.
The Save a Lot cost and then your operational cost.
Save a Lots cost $6 million a year to operate. We like lease space from the city. We're trying to buy our property, but it costs $500,000 a year because we don't have to pay rent. We got a upcycled modular building for our store, and then we reuse wood chips that would have gone to the landfill to help us grow nutrient dense produce on site.
So what you're saying is you were able to take the things that the city and other folks would have just gotten rid of or walked away from and
Mhm.
turn that into a low cost, profitable, and community impacting organization.
It's not profitable yet
Okay.
because we are one of 11 neighborhoods experiencing food apartheid in
Mm.
North Charleston. If all 11 have their form of Fresh Future Farm, then we can get economies of scale in purchasing because we don't have storage yet. So we have to shop a few times a week to keep up stock.
So to that point about storage and the space that now you're doing distribution, um, so before before the pandemic, were
Mhm.
you all harvesting and then selling same day? And that's how you
Yes.
were keeping stuff going? Okay.
Yeah,
And so now what are you doing the same thing? Are you buying and harvesting what you can same day and putting it out?
exactly. Or harvesting the day before and then packing the bags and distributing.
So this idea of storage for a farm and a store and a distribution space like yours, why would storage be important?
Because storage, in order for you get the most affordable prices for your general grocery and specialty items, you need to be able to buy in bulk, and we can't yet because we don't have the storage space.
So for FFF and
Mhm.
the way that someone just commented, recycle and upcycle, as you just mentioned, how are you finding or how are you creating the capital to keep going in order to not just expand, but to keep pushing this growth and this community relationship moving forward? Like, what are you all doing in that way for someone who's trying to learn how they might replicate what you're doing?
We plan to hold a class probably in the fall with how to start a nonprofit farm that's rooted in justice. So there's that. But one of the things, or a couple of things that I learned from Will Allen is first, no matter what you do when you start your food justice work, you don't go into debt. And also that you create multiple revenue streams. So where the store is closed, We're about to move to paid deliveries, like a justice-driven Instacart for the community. But we also sell merchandise. We have cookbooks. We do classes, and then we just uh, are developing a team so that we can reach out to businesses and individuals to raise the money that we need. And we're learning on the job. So what I've learned is if philanthropy can give 3 to 5 years of economic support to a business like this, that'll give you the time to develop your skills and then be sustainable from then on.
So you just dropped a lot of nuggets and a lot of just things right there. And my mind is like, I'm about to have everybody get off. We need to have a private conversation so we can plan this next part of my life out. So you said you're going to offer a class. Do you have any details around that yet? Can I be the
Mhm.
first student? I mean, I just lots of questions about this right now.
Yeah. I taught the class a couple years at the Stone Barns Young Farmers Conference at the end of the year. But we just want to offer it via Zoom so that no matter where you are, you can obtain this information. But go ahead.
I was saying, and this is going to be a class for folks like, are you all thinking like, okay, local, is no cost, and then somebody who might be coming from out of state, like there might be a fee, or is this going to be free to everybody? I just need to know what I need to do to get into the class. All right, I told you coming back to the chickens, but I want to know how I can get in this class.
We'll charge a nominal fee for the class because uh, Growing Power offered me a scholarship to figure this out. And we want to pass that on or pay it forward. So we'll charge a nominal fee specifically to organizations that are rooted in communities because this doesn't work. Food justice doesn't work if it's not served up by the people that live in the community.
So two questions here.
Mhm.
One's gonna follow up with the classes. Before we got on, you talked about you all were offering these food classes and things like that. Now, how do we find those?
Yes.
Because I told you I am gonna be on this next class. Y'all don't know stuff about smoked portobello sandwiches and salmon and I'm just over here hungry now. It was about supper time and how do folks find these classes and get involved? And then I want to talk to you again about operating costs because you got somebody very interested.
Okay, the best way to find out about all of the classes that we are about to offer or going to offer in the future is by following us on social media. So Facebook and Instagram are two ways to keep in touch and get connected with those classes. And the class that you're referencing, we're doing anti-inflammatory foods with my buddy Chef Marcus Middleton here in town on Tuesday evening.
Mm, If I follow you, you gonna follow me back?
Yes.
I just want to make not for everybody else, just for me. I'm trying to turn my life around. My follower to following count is it's off. It's off.
Yeah.
So again, back to the point about Save a Lot. You talked
Yes.
about the $6 million operating costs. Is that for one store or for a
Mm-hmm.
couple of stores? Okay, so let me just be clear. You said 6 million
Yeah.
for one Save a Lot store versus 500K for you to have employees, grow the food, harvest, and run your own grocery store.
Mm-hmm. And that's before we get economies of scale.
And that's before, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so not only is it about to go down because y'all are getting ready to make some serious moves, and I was about to come move out there. You thought this was a game. We gonna figure it out. It's all right.
You might change your mind when you get here in March and it's 99 degrees.
Look, I used to live in Arkansas for a little bit. I swore I was gonna stay down there, but then I was moved to be back in
Uh,
Ohio. I was moved. But so when it comes to actually creating economies of scale. for FFF. And you're talking about there are 11 folks like you, 11 other cities or counties or townships that need an FFF in their own space. What does it look like for FFF to branch out further, to go and be in these spaces?
Well, there's 11 communities in North Charleston.
Okay. Thank you for the question.
So what it looks like is community members from those other communities coming to Fresh Future Farm, running our store, training in our store, learning to grow food the way that we do, and then taking those skills back to their neighborhood and being the folks employed in those spaces. And because we have more people in our network doing the same thing, then we can buy in bulk. And that's where the economy of scale come in.
So you just dropped so much knowledge on us, and I am so interested, and I have so many questions, and I want to make sure that we stay on time. So I'm not going to ask you all of my questions.
Yes.
But I do have one question that I want to ask. And that is really around the history of the area that you're in. How do you understand it, or what's the history of the community you find yourself in now, and why are you seeing and understanding such food apartheid to exist?
Okay, that's a big old question.
Uh,
First, Charleston in general, 40% of the enslaved Africans that came to the United States came through Charleston ports. So most of our people came through this space, and they were kidnapped because of their agricultural acumen. So, those rice fields and cotton crops that made the South rich happened because of the ingenuity of the West African enslaved people. There's also a rich Gullah Geechee culture here that has still kept its customs and its language since enslavement time, and we celebrate all of that through our word.
We need to just let that sit for a moment in talking about the space of where so many of our ancestors came through from, why, and part of the reason why just these particular people were stolen and removed from the land, and the ancestral connections. And so I want to ask you a question, because we've dabbled in it a little bit, but that dichotomy of understanding, particularly in the Black community, of engagement with the land and farming as a memory and a traumatic pain experience of enslavement, and how you all might be engaging that or balancing that out in your work at FFF, at There's Too Many F's.
Yeah.
Fresh Future Farm.
Yeah. I remember a time as a young person when a cricket jumped on my shoulder and almost dislocated my shoulder jumping away. But as we had the necessity when I was an adult to grow food for my children, it was growing the food that reconnected me to nature in a way that I'd never been connected before. So for us, and I think for other people, for churches, there's an opportunity to unlearn what they taught us in school about slavery and reconnect with what I call ancestral muscle memory. That these practices that don't involve any chemicals, we don't irrigate our crops, they're already in our DNA. And it takes us to get outside to reconnect and listen to those instincts.
We got that flash on the screen. Reconnect with our ancestral muscle memory. And what would you say some of the strongest memories that have come back or come through for you would be in the space of planting and teaching and cooking?
Just the thought when we teach these STEAM-based, STEM plus art, like you said, classes, and explaining to young children that our ancestors didn't make any trash, that everything
Mm,
around them was used to grow rich soil and food. And we just happened one time, as an example, I gotten some Christmas tree cuttings from Lowe's, and I was going to use them to make a wreath. And they were sitting down on the ground when we found out there was going to come a snowstorm. And we live on the coastal plains, so usually we can grow year round. But if it's an extended snowstorm that lasts more than 24 hours, it can kill our crops like lettuces, for example. So I'm
mhm.
jumping over this pile of trimmings to try to pull this row cover over. And no matter how much you staple that stuff down, you come back the next day and it's blown all over the
Ye-
place.
Yep,
So
yep.
I stopped and looked at those Christmas tree branches and then just started overlapping them over our lettuces and mustards. And guess what? After 4 days or a week of snow, our mustard greens and our lettuces survived.
Mm. So that ancestral muscle memory of understanding the inner workings of nature and the
Yeah,
ingenuity to use what is available, as you said, and make no waste. So not just using the row cover and the plastic pipes or or whatever it is that you use to put them down. You're like, you know what?
yeah,
What can these branches do, and how can
yeah,
these systems exist? You were dropping some powerful stuff today. We gonna talk. We gonna keep talking because we only have a few minutes left, and I am so sad because there's just so much knowledge coming out of here. But we do have one final question that I think is going to embody a lot of what we've come to be discussing. And that would be, what are the steps of reconnecting with our ancestral muscle memory?
you have to grow food in order to reconnect and get out of the rat race and back into the garden to do that.
And and what is a food or something easy that somebody might be able to grow in their own home in order to get through this, in order to get into this process?
The easiest and most versatile thing that you can grow is garlic. Take your garlic bowl, bust it up into the individual cloves. You don't have to peel, just plant them. And you can use the greens in your stir fries, your pastas, your scrambled eggs in the morning. And within a week, you have something.
Mm,
And
mm.
it keeps coming back.
So you have dropped again just so much knowledge on us, and just even this idea of relearning and reconnecting and tapping into ancestral muscle memory. I know that's something I'm gonna sit with, not just for this week, not just today. Like I'm gonna be on that for a while. I'm gonna be pondering that idea and what FFF is doing. And so we've got a lot of folks who may be listening later on, tuning in now, or are contemplating trying to do some of the work that you're doing. And outside of the class that's coming up, which I hope and probably many others on here hope to participate in. What are ways that folks who are in the church setting can be supporting, donating, or connecting to you right now?
Okay, there are two ways. If you want to support the work that we do so we can offer the neighborhood discounts to the community that we serve, you can donate through our website and it's specifically donorbox.org/FFF donate. But the additional thing that we're doing, we started a conference 2 years ago, and now we've formed a coalition, and we are trying to recruit more young farmers to that work. And as we all know, as Reverend Brown has spoken so eloquently about, churches have access to land. So if there are folks who want to connect with us about making incubator farm space available or selling some of the unused land to Black farmers, they can reach out by emailing us at info@scblackfarmers.com.
Okay, can you give that to us one more time, please?
info@scblackfarmers.com.
Germaine. Oh, what you have given us today. We are so thankful that you have been with us, that you have just taught us so much and given us so much to think about. And I want to offer you just a chance to give any final remarks before we invite ourselves in for the closing.
Well, one of the things, about chickens. We have the best place in eggs in town. And everything that I know, I learned off the internet. So YouTube and Google University are your friends. There's free information out there.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So much. We thank you again, Germaine, for just being with us. Actually, just stay on as we close. But we appreciate you. Everyone, make sure you go onto their website, donate, be part of the program, look out for classes, support. Follow them on all social media. Again, Germaine's Fresh Future Farm from Fresh Future Farm. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.